Hello, Brave friends. Thanks for tuning in to the Brave Files podcast. I'm your host, Heather Vickery. Before we get started, I have to ask you a serious question. Have you reserved your spot for the Brave Method workshop yet? This event only happens 4 times a year, and it is always so fantastic. This is the event where I teach my trademarked Brave Method. It's a powerful 5-part system that will help you leverage your fears into intentional bravery and finally build the life and the business of your dreams. You are worth it, and you deserve to have everything you desire. The Brave Method will help you figure out what those next steps are. I know you're out there on the precipice of some wonderful change or some transformation. Maybe you don't know exactly what it is, what it looks like, how to get there, but we can help you. This is an incredible event. It's not just for entrepreneurs. It's not just for business building. It's for anybody who is ready to embrace a bigger, bolder, braver, more beautiful life. Why do we do that? Because we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that when we choose bravely on purpose, we choose bigger, we win bigger, and it's contagious. You see, the Brave Method isn't a follow these steps to success kind of thing. The Brave Method is about teaching you how to think creatively and strategically to truly have everything that your heart desires. It's the perfect combo of a right brain type A systems and left brain woo-woo mindset, energy, internal growth, and it's the perfect solution for go-getters just like you. People who know they're destined for better and bigger, but something always just seems to be in the way. So I want you to go and grab your spot right now. Visit vickeryandco.com/workshop. The event starts on July 20th, and we need to see you there. It's going to be an incredible 9 days together. Again, July 20th, vickeryandco.com/workshop to get all of the details and reserve your spot and bring a friend. I can't wait to see you there. If you have any questions, just reach out. You can email me, heather@vickeryandco.com. Okay, friends, I'm really excited to share today's episode with you. When I was first introduced to Kelly Gordon, I knew we were going to be friends. Something just clicked. Kelly and I are extremely different, but her honesty, passion, and persistence at this thing we call life is really inspiring, and it really lit me up. Kelly is a lot of wonderful things, including being a member of the LGBTQ community. She's a business owner. She's an expert at emotional awareness. And in fact, she says this is her superpower, which is a little unlikely. When you hear her story, that'll make more sense. She's a survivor of emotionally abusive childhood, an activist, a recovering alcoholic, an advocate, really kind-hearted person, a truth teller, and she's also someone who has autism. And getting her autism diagnosis at 33 provided Kelly Gordon with a lot of answers, but it did not fundamentally change who she was and how she successfully navigated the world. I can't wait to introduce you to Kelly, so let's get started.
Proactive, transparent, and authentic.
This is Heather Vickery, and you're listening to The Brave Files, stories from people living courageously. When we choose bravely in big and small ways, it powerfully elevates our lives. I hope these stories connect with you and encourage you to embrace bravery in every possible way, day after day. Together, we can build a movement of courageous living that enriches both our lives and our communities. And if you enjoy the show, I ask you to please share it with others. Maybe think of someone who you want to choose bravely right alongside you. Thanks for tuning in. Now here's the show. Listeners, we all know that life can be difficult. It's still beautiful and it's nuanced, but sometimes it's just flat out difficult. Today's guest is Kelly Gordon, and she has faced a multitude of challenges in her life, and she's managed to turn most of them into opportunities. She's a member of the LGBTQ community who grew up in the South, the child of an abusive and mentally ill mother, and she's autistic. But Kelly has figured out how to navigate the world and to achieve great success. I fell in love with Kelly, honestly, and the first time I talked to her, and her willingness to approach everything life throws at her from a wildly unique and creative place that for Kelly just feels natural. Kelly, I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome to the Brave Files.
I am so excited to be here. I can't even tell you.
We had this lovely kismet energy the first time we were connected. Well, shout out to Christine. She introduced us. Hey, Christine.
Christine is amazing. We love her very much.
Now we got to make sure she's listening. Mm-hmm. But obviously she knew that we would hit it off. And you have really, I think, an incredible story, and it's nuanced, right? So I spent a lot of time thinking about how we want to, meander through your brave journey. And I think what I'd like to start with is your autism diagnosis and how that happened and what sort of light that shined on your life. And let's go from there.
Definitely. So for me, it didn't come early in life like it does for a lot of people. I think maybe now I'm probably telling my age at this point. Like, it didn't come when I was 14 or anything like that. It actually didn't come until I was 33. After I was experiencing a lot of things in my family and went to therapy for reasons that we may cover today. It was a very traumatic 18 months of my life, and I decided that I needed to find somebody to help me with that, and that's really where it stemmed from. Had I known it sooner, I'm not sure how that would have changed my trajectory or if it would have, but it has allowed me to reframe how I understand the world from now an adult perspective in a way that I'm actually super interested in how I could have maybe gotten farther faster if I'd known it earlier.
Absolutely. Now, so if you were already 33 when you were diagnosed, what was happening in your life at that moment? Did you already have a business? You're an entrepreneur, business owner. Was that already happening?
All of that was already happening for years. Okay. So I just turned 35, just to kind of tell my age. That was only a couple of years ago. And
I didn't even realize that. The way you talk about it feels like you've really settled into this, for a long time.
It's kind of how my brain works, which is weird. And shout out to my therapist. It's a whole thing. But, she is basically my value system is based in competency. So if I understand where I'm trying to go, I get there really quickly. And I had known for a long time that I thought and behaved in ways that others didn't. I suspected I could be on the spectrum. I just didn't have an official piece to that. And so when I was younger, I carried a notebook around with me and was like, when people say these things, they mean this. I didn't understand sarcasm or, that people lie and why that might be a thing and, how to determine those differences. So I did know that my peers were not carrying around notebooks like I did, and I kept that to myself. I realized that was not,
you knew it was quote unquote different.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I knew at least to some capacity that others weren't doing that. And so I did keep it to myself. So there was that awareness, but I would have figured all of this out, including being gay. That's a whole different story. But I would have figured
I'm going to get there.
You're going to get there. I would have figured out everything a lot earlier, but I was homeschooled from 6th grade on. And so I was not around people to understand how I was in society, how I was different. I just was who I am, and I didn't have a vocabulary or a lens to see that through. And I rode horses, I'm an equestrian, I was eventing, so I was with those people, but it really wasn't my peers. They were always much older, and so I just couldn't learn the things earlier that I needed to. Now, knowing what I do now, I know how amazing that was. I probably would have run into issues that I never experienced. I didn't feel lesser. I didn't feel different to a way that made me not be able to function or anything like that. I just knew that I was different.
That's so fascinating to me. I've actually been doing some research and talking, reconnected in the last couple of years with a woman that I was really good friends with in high school. And she and I have been having conversations. So Karina, if you listen, shout out to you too, about the fact that women often just fly under the radar. Autistic women fly under the radar because as women, we mask so successfully, and we have to do that anyway, as survival, that it doesn't often show up. So I'm thinking about all of the different ways that you had to mask or cope or be creative to build a successful business, to survive, an abusive childhood, and to be a functioning adult. When I say that to you, what comes to mind?
So even like my mother was borderline borderline personality.
Okay, I was going to say, let's explain borderline for folks.
Yeah, so it is a personality disorder. It has very unique characteristics. Most of it is rooted in manipulation, control, because of how out of control they always feel. So being raised in a home like that, and again, this has all kind of come up in the last couple of years for me. My father had pancreatic cancer, died unexpectedly within 5 weeks. My mom was unstable. That just sent her to Mars. I mean, that was just complete. It was bad. I had to put her in a facility and all of this. And that's really part of that 18 months that was so difficult for me. And learning to go to therapy and saying, hey, like, where is my lens here? I know that I'm different, but how different? And why are all of these things so hard? And realizing and putting, mom had not also been diagnosed until she went into that facility. She went into a behavioral facility.
Really? So again, just only in the last 2 years.
Right. And when my father passed away, he sat next to me the week that he died, and he said, when I die, because we knew this was happening, your mother's going to need to go live somewhere else. I argued with him about it. I was like, no, like, that's not going to happen. You know, it's going to be perfectly fine. I'm going to take care of it. I had retired them. I'd bought the house that they were in. Like, I was taking care of them for my agency. And I was like, that's not going to happen. That's not really where we are. Well, he was basically creating a buffer that I just didn't know existed. So, you know, for me, I was raised in this way, and like understanding that was an abusive home. The things that I talk about and the way that things made me feel, or how certain events can trigger me, like, these are coming from very manipulative, controlling, abusive places. And for me, just kind of share with people, like, it's really difficult. My father was not like that. He was an amazing man, and there's a lot of weird resentment. So I think we feel lots of things in lots of different times, and just trying to learn how to get through that. But all of this was very new, and then how to frame myself around how I was raised with her, and how toxic our relationship has always been, and how difficult it was. It really did help me understand why that was the case. So for me, everything's black and white, and I live in gray areas very uncomfortably. It's just something that I have to get used to. I spend my whole life getting used to this, but she wants to live in gray areas. And so, like, that's the root of the issue with us. That's the whole oil and water thing. But it's kind of even framing the fact and saying, like, I was raised in an abusive home, it still, like, makes me uncomfortable. It is very true and toxic, and we talk through all of these things. It's just weird.
Would you share with us, if you're willing, some of the ways that you were raised in an abusive home? Definitely.
So it's those of you who understand or know people that are borderline personality, this will make sense. So there's a cornerstone book called Eggshell, Walking on Eggshells. It actually was written by a psychiatrist and somebody who has borderline personality. And the title, like, sums it up. Every single moment, something could explode. And so you're literally all the time walking on eggshells. You have no idea what will set that person off, because what set them off yesterday is not what's going to set them off today. You have no idea where that's coming from. And so it's a very uncomfortable way to live. I've recently rekindled the relationship, had a relationship at all with my aunt, because my mother kept me very isolated. That was a whole control thing. And so she's actually the only person still living that's ever lived with my mother. And so we can talk and understand that person rules the house, the tone of the house, everything that happens, everyone that comes in and out. There is no relaxation or comfortable moment ever for any reason.
Oh man.
And so
that had to be particularly, I mean, how aware of that now that you look back do you think you were? And while you didn't have your diagnosis back then, you did have coping mechanisms. You've clearly shared some of those with us, and you were very aware, I think, from what I'm hearing, that those were in fact coping mechanisms, even though you didn't understand why you needed them. How aware were you of that volatile situation, or was it just normal and that's how you lived?
Sadly, kind of both. I thought that that's what was normal. I didn't realize until into my teenage years, spending time with friends, I was like, oh, this isn't like everyone else lives. This is different. And I don't like this. I prefer that. It's much more comfortable. It doesn't set me off in ways. So, the whole idea that the entire premise of the house was unstable, I need stability. The idea that there was something that I couldn't understand coming. So it was like a perpetual state of just being triggered.
Yeah.
Right. So
because that's one of the ways that you thrive as someone who lives with autism is this schedule, the rigidity of it, the knowing what to expect, the prepping and planning. It's also what makes you really, really good at your work. But
it definitely is that. It's that was the hard part, is how, and to kind of talk about what you said, I knew that I was doing or reacting in certain ways. I didn't have the vocabulary till well into my 20s that those were coping mechanisms. To me, that was normal. Yeah, like this is just how I respond. And like Dad and I knew that, we would say, oh, Mom's just being Mom, and that was kind of, which is a whole other thing, thank you therapy, right, is how to actually compartmentalize that in a way that he did the best that he could while also dealing with an extremely volatile partner, and how that must have been difficult for him. And as, a full-blown adult at this point, understanding that he did all of those things in the best way that he could, but it didn't change my outcome. The outcome was still the same, which is, my whole thing is, I love what I do now, and I'm able to excel in the strengths that I have. I got most of my really, really good strengths from those kind of shitty times, right? Like,
isn't that so fascinating how that seems like it's always our truths, right? Mm-hmm. Those are the things that make us capable and stronger.
Right. It's who those being able to take that and do anything with it and live within it. My whole thing is emotional intelligence and communication. That is what I do. That is what I love to talk about, all of these things. But I know, which is also very difficult to compartmentalize, I know I got it from there. And I got it from her and living in that house.
Well, and that is so interesting to me. You told me when we first talked that was your superpower, was emotional awareness and intelligence. And I'll be very honest now, this comes from my lack of knowledge about autism, but emotional awareness and autism don't seem to go hand in hand in my mind. So, because sarcasm and like all the intuitiveness, the facial expressions, the things that the very basic things that those of us who don't experience autism or have in our family think we know, which is fully willing to admit we probably don't know shit. But can you explain how that's your superpower and how, what I think I've been hearing from you is that you've grown this superpower as a result of being autistic because of the way your childhood was, and how do those things work together?
Not very well for a really long time. I'm going to be really honest about it. There was a lot of failure there, a lot of not understanding. I don't understand a lot of what happens even still. And like some people of my friends close to me will say, I don't understand how you get this and not this. Because it doesn't, like, to them, that all lives in the same place. So I have a friend, somebody close to me, I was needed them to help review a sensitive email that I was sending out, because it can come across a little cold, if you will. Sure. And I just wanted to make sure that it was as soft as it needed to be. And I can verbally do that very well. I don't do it well in writing. And so I wanted somebody to review that, and being able to talk to this person about what I wanted to convey. And so she's like, okay, I understand what you're trying to do. And then read the email. She was like, these are two different things. And in my brain, it was not. I don't understand how that was not this. And so it's weird how my brain, it's because it was raised that, like, it it doesn't understand how it got there, which is a little bit difficult to be able to teach anybody to do it or talk about it in a way that allows them to see it. But I can very easily understand things or pick something up. I could pick up in an instant if you changed in any way, shape, or form. Because to me, in learning it, it was a threat. It was a vulnerability threat. Like, how is this going to affect me?
Yeah.
But if it's understanding, I don't know, relationships, this was a difficult part for me early on. I don't understand why this is not working in the way that I think that it should. Relationships being friends or romantic or otherwise, it just doesn't compute, because what's happening is I'm threat assessing, and the other doesn't fall into that. So to me, it doesn't live in the same place.
So that's a really fascinating element of your story for me, because I don't think that ability to catch an energy change or, all of that, which clearly was a survival mechanism for you and your household with your mom, by the way you're describing it. I don't think that's traditionally something that folks with autism can easily do. Is that correct?
Oh, for sure. And it did not, it didn't come about until I could learn how to articulate it, which this was much later in life. For me, when it was younger, it would just trigger me, and I would become just more verbal about it. Like, it would make me angry, right? I don't understand this. This makes me mad, right? Because I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. But I was also in a place and around people, because when I was much younger, we didn't have the access that we have today to be able to find other people like me. And that's why there was no vocabulary for it. I just thought that I just had to figure out how to be me, and that backfired a lot of times until I figured that out. Just being honest.
And it also led you to something that you and I have in common, which is the idea that you do not like to be told what to do. Right? I do not like that either. I always joke and say that while I work very well with people, I don't work well for people. It's why I own my own business. And you were like, I get that.
I resonate with that so hard. I am very unemployable. It is. It's just who I can bring a lot to organizations, but I do what I want to do always. I have always been that way.
Is that because it gave you a sense of control in a very out of control situation growing up?
Oh yeah. It's got to live there. That was the only thing that I could control. By God, I'm going to control it.
Yeah. Wow. That's so fascinating to me. Your whole story to me is so hopeful, even though there has been so much trauma and the things that you've experienced, because I always say that, the things that we maybe consider our deficits or our faults can be used as our strengths, should we choose to do so. Should we choose to look at them in a unique way or rearrange them or get creative with them. And one of the things that this manifests itself as for you is transparency versus vulnerability and communication. And I really want to dig in with that, because I think we have a lot of listeners who either are neurodiverse or have neurodiverse family members or neurodiverse team members. And this idea of how we can sort of flip it all on its head and make it work for us instead of against us is really exciting to me. So can you share with me a little bit of your communication skills, how this has made you stronger with that, and transparency versus vulnerability?
Most definitely. Transparency versus vulnerability is one of my favorite things. Communication gets us there for sure. So I have a good friend of mine, and she told me years ago, she was like, you know what, Kelly, you are more honest with perfect strangers than most people will ever be with themselves. And at the time, I didn't quite understand her at the time. It took me years and really coming into who I am and understanding, what that means in how I actually operate in the world. And she is right when I realize how people aren't transparent or authentic. So for me, transparency is Heather, you ask me a question and I answer it. I might be honest, very honest, but I think that that's just transparent. Being authentic to me is offering it to you in a way that allows me to be vulnerable
without it being asked.
You. Right.
Yeah.
To me, that's me being vulnerable or allowing you to have somewhat of a power over me in that moment. Now, if you just ask me and I tell you, that's just being honest.
That's so interesting to me. I would, from where I sit, and my brain works differently than your brain. So I would say that yes, and they're the same, it's still vulnerable. That level of transparency could potentially still put you at risk in the wrong situation, with the wrong person, depending on what you're going to say. And this is maybe where it gets a little dicey. Like sometimes we need to be really honest and transparent, but in maybe a submersive way, like in a creative way. And that's something that's a little bit tricky for you.
And that's very tricky for me. And in my younger years, almost impossible for me, which was trying to figure out who deserved to know that or not. I don't generally have that. I know that is a thing. I know that you might choose to tell somebody something that you wouldn't choose somebody else, even if you considered them both friends. That I don't understand much at all. And so for me, the friends that I have close to me, I tell them everything because I don't necessarily understand why not to. Like if they're my friends, I'm going to do this. But that means for me, I have super close friends and then like maybe acquaintances, right?
Yeah.
Like there's not,
it means
again,
that
it's black
circle's
and
not
white.
very wide.
Right.
Too big of a risk.
I can't live in the gray space. It doesn't make sense. So it's the black and white space for me.
Right. And I love it all. And I'm trying to relate it to the way I process and my children and my clients and my, the people on my team. And I love the gray space, but I also love rules and systems and I shouldn't say I love rules. My only rule is that there are no rules. We talked about that. But what I mean by rules is systems and the ability, like routine and schedule. I love that. I shouldn't say rules because I think rules are stupid. And I don't know. Where do you land on rules?
I want to know what is acceptable and when, and that's probably about it.
That's a boundary, right? That's really just a boundary. Like boundaries are limits that define acceptable behavior. In the book I have coming out in the fall, there's a huge section dedicated to that, right? And so I appreciate that. I'm like, fuck the rules. But I do like a structure and a schedule and a routine. And I want to know what I'm dealing with, but also take it all with a little bit of grain of salt, and we don't have to keep it. I don't have to keep it all, whatever anybody else is thinking or feeling.
And that can throw me off for sure. Like, for example, even in personal, social things with friends who I, like close friends, if I expect something to go a certain way and like, hey, let's go have dinner, right? Okay, cool. It's going to be me and you, and we're going to go have sushi, right? If you call me that day or any close to time, it could just be that entire day, and say, hey, so-and-so is going to meet with us, it might throw me off enough that I'm not coming.
Right.
Like,
so you just want to know what to expect all the time.
Yep. And it's just that black and white. Because I've done some sort of mental clarity on, okay, this is who they are. This is how we operate together. I'm comfortable, all of these things. But there's the time to be able to get there.
That's fascinating to me. Now, how does this play out in work? If you want to very quickly just share with our listeners what your business is, what you do professionally.
Definitely. So I operate a digital agency, Dapper Codes, as well as I have a mentorship program, which is really what I absolutely love doing, where I teach other digital agency owners how to structure their businesses and scale, really focusing on things like communication, connection, and emotional intelligence with our employees, contractors, and clients for a better work environment and what we're able to achieve together. So with that, it really, fitting into how I work, I can, because I'm the boss, basically, I can decide what it is that I'm going to do each day and how that's going to be structured, and understanding what those milestones need to be on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. But I've decided them. And for me, again, I'm vastly unemployable. I have to decide what those are myself so that I've bought into it and then move forward. But my ability to communicate and sense other people, I do a lot of sales training and things like that. So I've sold over $2 million in agency services since I started in like 2015. And so to do that is really gotten from all of the things that made my childhood and early adulthood really, really hard. And so knowing and how that kind of bottled and moved forward. And so I teach other people how to do that. And I absolutely love it.
I think that's really, really really cool. So how does your black and whiteness, your need for transparency and expectations play out as a business owner?
As a business owner to the
What does
clients,
that look like?
It really helps them feel comfortable that they're getting what they paid for and that we're reaching the goals that they wanted to reach. In my industry, not to get too much into business, there's a lot of issues of that transparency of what we agreed on, what went live under my brand, what it is going to go live and when. Because of my black and white and needing to plan, it plays into that extremely well.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. It really is fascinating. You're like, whether you realize this or not, you probably don't, is you're totally utilizing what I call the Brave method, which is my coaching platform to have a happier, more successful life and business. And so much of what you're saying falls into that category of the Brave method. And that really comes from, you even used words that I use, like on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually basis. Like, what am I doing? Where do I want to go? What are the goals? What is the big picture vision? How am I communicating this? How am I asking for what I want? How am I telling people what to expect from me? So I love all of that. And I really am just so interested in the fact that I live in this kind of beautiful, mostly gray space, and you live in this beautiful black and white space, and we can have these overlapping success tools. And I just want, it is interesting, and I want listeners and I want kind of the world to see, like, it just doesn't have to be, I know, anti-black and white. It doesn't have to be like this or like that. Like, we can all coexist on this. I can collaborate with you and meet your needs while still meeting my own. We don't have to go so far as to exclude somebody who functions differently than us. Mm-hmm.
I see that now. Had I known that I'm autistic earlier in life, I don't know how that would have played out, and I don't know what I would have maybe done or not done to get here. But what I know that it does now is there's really no reason that it should be a problem for me or for who I work with. So long as I figured out how to work within our cultural, societal, behavioral norms. Because my brain works differently, it's okay as long as I can communicate with you maybe why I had a different reaction, which is a lot of my whole life, but it's fine.
I know, I totally get it. But I love it. We talked about this before. I wish that more people in general, but especially business owners, were more clear and concise with what clients or coworkers or whomever should expect. If more people did that, again, I call that boundary setting, expectations management, everything would just run so much more smoothly.
I do a lot of coaching on that too. What is it that we're agreeing to? What does that mean? What can you ask of me? What can I ask of you? All of these things, which given the home that I was raised in, that was not a thing. Boundaries are not a thing with borderline. There is no existence of that. They don't understand it. They run over all of it. So I had no idea, A, that was a thing, or B, how to do it in any way. It's still an ongoing piece for me to learn how to do that, and it was really difficult for me in the beginning of the business of working with clients and making sure that there were boundaries. So that was a whole learning curve. But you said it right, that's the client management piece of understanding how to communicate that. And boundaries is without it, there's just no understanding of who I am and who you are and how we're going to work together.
Yeah, everything falls apart. I love that. I think it's amazing. Kelly, what would you say has been your biggest pleasant surprise in discovering or diagnosing your autism?
I think for me, there really was a cathartic element of understanding why I was different. And that I am, that it just is true. I'm not just a weirdo. I'm me, and there's a reason for this. And yes, I have all of these weird reasons or thoughts that I might react in ways that you might not understand. But there's a reason for it, and it doesn't give any of it. It's not condoning some of those responses, but it's at least understanding why it is that they exist in the first place, so that then I can launch from there.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe it gave you a little bit of emotional freedom.
Most definitely. I was like, oh, okay. And I could sigh a little bit of a relief of like, now I see that. Okay. I can go from here.
And so in the last 2 years, you've gotten this diagnosis. You lost your father. Your mother was diagnosed. And you
and my
are
partner
now
of 7 years left me. There's that.
Oh, shit. I know. I do want to ask about that, but it's going to have to be like an aside conversation. We'll do it for the show, I promise. But I want to finish this piece first. Oh, man. So a lot has happened in the last 2 years. But now here you are. You want to talk about it. You want to share it. You want to help other people. This is, I think, probably a deep core of what you're doing as a mentor, which you have set aside as a professional part of your company. Does it feel brave to be in this space?
I can't say that it does. I can see how others might describe it as so, but I don't see it as that. For me, I can hear, like, listening to your podcast and hearing other people's stories, I'm like, that's what this is. And who we mentioned in the beginning, Christine, who connected us, talking with her and being able to see how people who are not me look at and frame things and see how this was I was like, oh wow, that is a lot. Maybe that's why this was so hard.
Yeah. Is there ever a moment in your life, or can you identify one where you're like, that shit's brave? Kelly, you're brave.
So I had been very sheltered my whole life. Homeschooled, just was writing. I hadn't been anywhere. My family, we'd maybe traveled to, North Carolina and Georgia, and that was kind of it, right? And when I was 16, the summer I turned 16, I worked at a camp that I knew people from England, and I went to go visit them. So I hopped on a plane in Charlotte, flew to O'Hare, and then flew to Heathrow. I stayed there for a month and came back, and it was the first time I'd ever been really like away anywhere. And I still see that as brave. Maybe, we didn't even have cell phones back then. So like,
I know, right? I've got you by over a decade. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and I still see that as brave. I don't know. And it could be my brain. I just didn't see the gray area. I'm going to go do this. I've always been that way. I didn't necessarily see it as, oh, you're being brave at the time, but I see it now. Sure. And I still recognize it as such.
Yeah. That's one of the core objectives of this show, is to help people recognize that so many of our everyday choices are, in fact, brave choices. And when we embrace them as so, and we understand it, it feels good. It feels like we're empowered and we're strong, and we start to make bigger, bolder, braver choices. So it's why I always like to ask that question. You had indicated homeschooled, raised in the South, very sheltered. Also, we alluded, and you just mentioned your longtime partner. Share with us your coming out story, because you've dropped the hint to me that it's a very unusual, but I don't actually know what it is.
Well, the fact that now that I know that I'm autistic, it helps. Okay. So, but at the time, this was in my early 20s. I legit, this is ridiculous. I can't believe I'm telling you this. So I literally woke up one morning and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gay. I get it. Like, I just woke up and like realized what had been going on. And so I go downstairs, I talk to my parents, and I tell my mom, and she's like, okay, go tell your dad. My dad's like super Southern guy, like cowboy boots, cowboy hat, like the whole thing. And I sit next to him and I tell him, and all he says to me is, I wondered. That was it. And then I call my really good friend Morgan. I'd known her since I was like 12, and I'm going to the whole thing. I love you. I want to share this with you, this whole thing. And she's like, Kelly, what's wrong? She can tell like something's up. Kelly, tell me what's wrong. What happened? And I'm just going on and on. And I say, Morgan, I'm gay. And she's like, I know, honey, but what's wrong? And then she goes, uh-oh. And she realizes what had happened. So the whole joke for them for moving forward with anybody that I told was, I know that you know. I know now. So we're good.
That's awesome.
It's just, my grandmother, Southern Baptist, pastor secretary for 45 years. What people imagine when I say that I've come out in the South, what I would have endured. It was not. For whatever reason, my life didn't go that way. But to me, now knowing that I'm autistic, I'm like, I just wake up one morning and I realize that's a thing, because it's black and white, and I just move forward with my life in that way.
Yeah, I love it. And it's a relief to know that on top of all of the other challenges life had thrown at you, that didn't have to be one, when that's the one everyone would expect.
Right? How weird is that?
From the South, from a religious family. I know, right? Well, we can, the universe shows up for us when we most need it, I guess.
Just gave me a win.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It totally did. I love that. And I love this notion that, stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason, but that doesn't mean they're always right. Mm-hmm. And so it's really nice to know, for anyone who's listening, if there's any younger folks listening, if you're Southern, if you're afraid to come out, you're going to be okay. And if you don't think it's safe in your family, you can come out to me. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can come out to Kelly. She mentors people.
Yeah,
we're here for you. You're not alone, and your story doesn't have to be one of tragedy. We promise it's not. It's going to be okay.
It really is.
Kelly, I'd love to know from you. Do you have like a daily routine or a self-care practice or anything? Given the way your mind works and the way you function, is there anything that keeps you on track?
So I've actually just recently finished 75 Hard, which is a whole nother thing, but it's amazing and really has helped solidify some pieces that I thought I was mentally tough about.
Will you tell everybody what that is?
Oh, so 75 Hard, it's a program, I believe Andy Frisella is the one that created this. So 75 days, there's just all this different list of things that you have to do. It's a mental toughness challenge. There are physical and diet restrictions, but it is a mental toughness. So 2 workouts a day, twice a day, have to be 3 hours apart, one of them outside, drink a gallon of water a day, pick a diet and stick to it for 75 days, read a self-help book, 10 pages every day, take a progress picture every day. Those are at least the big ones.
75 days is a long-ass time.
It's a long time. And a really close friend of mine and we just finished that. And if I would have gone into it saying I have a routine and I'm mentally tough, I was incorrect. That was wrong. And so now this is actually, we just finished. This is our week off, and we're just going back to it because it just feels so uncomfortable to not be in that routine. But for me, a little bit of backstory. I'd started my business. I sat in front of my computer too long, ate a bunch of stuff I shouldn't have eten, and then I just got sick all the time because that's what happens when you don't take care of yourself, right? So one non-negotiable for me is I get up, I have almonds and a smoothie in the morning that's got emergency packets and green superfood and all of that. That is my non-negotiable. I get up, I do that, and I come in, and I've been doing for a long time now this thing, and this can help, I think, business or personally, really. If you're, basically I say everything that I'm grateful for, and then I list all of the things that are stressing me out, and then I create a 2-column table. On the left, I say everything that I have the power to change, and on the right, I put everything I do not have the power to change. And what I find is we all get really stuck in thinking that the things that we cannot change overpower the things that we can. And that has to date been incorrect. The things I can change or do something about column has always been longer than the ones that I can't do something about. And so it allows me personally or professionally to be able to move forward with even very stressful or difficult things because I can see a way forward. But for me in my brain, again, very black and white, what can I do and what can't I do? And it allows me to be comfortable in that space. So for me, those are my non-negotiables.
It's brilliant.
Mm-hmm. It helps.
I do a lot of those things, and I coach on a lot of those things, but I've never heard of the 2 columns. And, of course, that realizing that you have more control than you think you do. What do you do with the column of things you don't have control over?
I don't worry about it because I have a whole list of things that I can.
Yeah.
And it really just is I'm going to move forward this way because there's nothing I can do over here.
I love that. Well, and so that's where I would say that's how you have control over it. I say change the things you can and change your mindset about the things you can't control. And that's what you've done. You've changed your mindset about it.
It's still very black and white.
It's still very black and white, but then somehow it actually means you have control over everything. Even the things you don't have control over because you have control over how you think about them.
Yeah, and it's all, I'm not sure I came in contact with this thought process, but basically it's name the thing that scares you, right?
Yes.
And that's kind of what that is. What I don't have control over, which is why it's overpowering in my brain, is because it's scary. There's some fear associated. And so by naming it, it really takes that away. You're like, well, yeah.
It just takes out the power.
Right. Like, I can't do anything about that, but look at all of this that I have control over. It's very empowering.
I love it. I love it. You're so my person.
I love that.
I love it. Kelly, how do you celebrate success? I mean, there are just this whole conversation. We could have a 2-hour episode. We could get together every week. I think we could just talk and talk and talk and talk. And I really hope that we can build that relationship. I really hope we do. I feel a kinship. But so much of what you've shared to me deserves recognition and celebration. And first of all, I'm curious if you are a celebrator by nature, like if you are consciously aware of that, or if your black and whiteness doesn't take you there. And then also, how do you celebrate?
So 2 things. One, learning to celebrate is new based on some recent friendships, mostly because of the house that I lived in. Nothing was ever good enough. And so why would you celebrate that? It's not, so that was not in my brain. It's new for me. Another part of my story is I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober for 8 years. And so when I do celebrate now, thank you, I celebrate with mocktails. So, you know, that's a whole thing. I think what we spend money on is our value system. And I will drop some money on some really good food. Like it's just a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I always love that question. I love to hear how people answer it. And it's never comes with shame. So many people come on the show and go, oh, I don't think I'm good at that. And we find ways that maybe we don't even know it. Whether it's a high five or ringing a bell or posting on social media or calling a friend or going out for a mocktail or whatever it is, celebration begets celebration. And it's in partnership with gratitude. And you were mentioning your gratitude practice, which I absolutely love. I'm certified in positive psychology. I've written 2 books on gratitude. Like anytime somebody brings that to the table, gratitude and celebration come hand in hand, and they grow one another, just like on knowing our brave and stepping up into our brave. I love it. There's so much more. We'll have to have you back on because there's so much more I think we could talk about. But
I would love that. I think we can do all sorts of stuff together. So I'm definitely pleased.
Can. I'm in for it. Will you share with us, Kelly, what your favorite charitable organization is to support?
Yes, so my favorite one is Rabbit Sanctuary in Simpsonville, South Carolina. So a little fact about me is that I have an English Angora rabbit who I might love more than life itself. So, like, I love him. He is everything. And so I do support the Rabbit Sanctuary in Simpsonville, South Carolina. It's rabbitsanctuaryinc.org. And they do amazing work down there. And yeah, that's my choice.
That's very cool. Well, they will be our charity of the week. And y'all, I ask this question every week because I really think it's important to understand all of the different ways that we can be part of making the world a better, happier, more successful place in every possible way. And I love hearing each guest's charities of the week and sharing that. So get to know them, support them in any way that you can, or find an organization similar in your neighborhood to learn something about however it is that you want to do that. Kelly, we only, just very minutely talked about your professional work, but if somebody wants to learn more about you or engage you in conversation or learn about your mentorship or your business, how could they reach you?
Definitely. So the easiest way to do that is to search Facebook for the Digital Agency Empire Builders Group. I am in there all the time. Join us. Let me chat with you. You can also find me on Facebook, Kelly Gordon, and I'd be glad to chat with you because that's just obviously what I love to do. So let's talk.
I love that. Will you share your 3 words with us one last time?
Proactive, transparent, and authentic.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, those 3 words feel really spot on for you. Obviously, you picked them, so you felt that way. But proactive has always been a survival mechanism for you. If you were not proactive, the world was going to eat you up.
It was. And it was going to be really, really ugly, and it tried a couple times.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you won.
Me too.
So they're beautiful words. I think you're an incredible human. I'm so glad that you got to be here with us and share your story. Thank you so much.
I absolutely love being here, and I can't wait to possibly do this again with you.
Absolutely. All right, listeners, do not forget that the Brave Method Workshop is back. It starts on July 20th, but you have to register to secure your spot. You can do that at vickeryandco.com/workshop. Remember, this is where we have 9 days together, hands-on, awesome, intensive workshop where I break down my Brave method and teach you how to level up in your life and business. I hope that we get to see you there. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode or anything else you want to share. You can give me a call at 312-646-0205. I answer those calls myself. I respond directly. So let's hear what you have to say. I'm so glad you were here with us today. This is Heather Vickery reminding you today and every single day to go out and choose bravely. We'll see you next week. Hey friends, I want to share something really exciting with you. We already know you enjoy listening to podcasts because you're listening to this one, but I'm also betting you enjoy audiobooks. And hey, listen, if you don't already enjoy audiobooks, then it's time to check them out. That's why I'm really excited to share Libro.fm with you. They are an incredible new platform for listening to audiobooks. And by choosing Libro.fm over other audiobook services, you are supporting a local bookstore of your choice and investing in your local community. Libro.fm offers over 150,000 audiobooks via their primary platform, which, by the way, they built with love and from scratch because they're a small business also. They even offer bookseller recommendations for great audiobook options. You can sign up right now via www.vickeryandco.com/LibroFM. That's vickeryandco.com/LIBROFM. And when you do, you'll get one free audiobook of your choice, and the proceeds will go to your favorite local bookstore. Now, check what I just said there. You're going to get a free book, and the proceeds are still going to go to your local bookstore because Libro.fm makes sure that their booksellers get paid even when they give a promo to customers. I've listened to over 20 audiobooks this year alone. I especially love listening to memoirs read by the author, and it feels great knowing that all of my purchases support my local bookstore, The Book Table, in Oak Park, Illinois. Libro.fm. The same audiobooks, the same price, but a completely different story. Check them out right now at vickeryandco.com/LibroFM. Have you ever thought about starting a podcast? Maybe you've had this thought and then quickly shut it down because who has the time? Or you don't know how, or gosh, it just all seems too hard. If you have something to share with the world, we want to encourage you to get your message out. The world needs to hear it. Did you know that 50% of all homes are podcast fans? If you've ever wondered about having your own podcast or how it can increase your business or get your message across, then please join me and the other experts from the Podcast Power Academy for our monthly free Q&A session. It's called So You Want to Start a Podcast? This casual live conversation will help you understand how podcasting can be a great decision, why now is the best time to get started, and how to get into action with it. Visit podcastpoweracademy.com to learn more. You've been listening to The Brave Files, stories of people living courageously. To learn more about the show, find our show notes and full episode transcripts, or to get some great bonus content, visit thebravefilespodcast.com. And we would love to know what you think of the show. You can give us a call at 312-646-0205. Let us know your thoughts on the episode, the show in general, or maybe share with us how you're out choosing bravely. This episode is brought to you by Vickery & Co. Success Coaching. Coaching that helps you maintain a life well lived and a business well run. Learn more at vickeryandco.com. Our music was created and produced in a custom collaboration with Matt Lewis from ML Creative Consulting. a boutique firm dedicated to helping clients identify their unique sound and amplify their brand with custom-delivered soundtracks. We couldn't do any of this without our extraordinary audio engineer, Andrew Olson. Learn more about him and check out his work at findandrewolson.com. And special thanks to everyone on Team Brave, from our producers, associate producers, copy editors, writers, and support team. Special thanks to Molly, Mary, Kim, Sabra, and Sabrina. I'm your host and executive producer, Heather Vickery. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week.